Now, I already know some of you guys are going to come at me for this, but I'm just going to go ahead and go through the video anyways. What's going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops. And today, we're going to actually talk about the problems with the All-Star teams. Now, I feel like this year really is probably the most confusing year that I've seen in a long time. And there's some problems that need to be addressed. Now, I'm sure you guys see in the thumbnail, we have people that didn't make the All-Star team, such as Bradley Beal, Derrick Rose, Devin Booker, and there's other ones as well, such as Zach LaVine, Ja Morant, all those guys who were probably All-Stars on any other year or many other years, and this year they're just not going to be in the All-Star game. So that's why we need to talk about what's wrong with the All-Star deciding. Now, if you look at the All-Star teams, first for the Eastern Conference, this is probably the biggest question mark is why is Trae Young starting? And right now the Atlanta Hawks, they're literally at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, one of the worst records in the entire league. Granted, he is putting up insane statistics, but their team is so bad and he's starting in the All-Star game. Like, in previous years, we wouldn't even fathom that. We wouldn't even give that an opportunity for him to be maybe even an All-Star. I mean, we've seen it in past years with Devin Booker and with these other guys who have been very low. But the point is, they credit him for his insane statistics, but then they don't look at that for every single player. Like looking at Kyle Lowry, for instance, and comparing him to Derrick Rose and Bradley Beal. Now, Bradley Beal's averaging way better numbers, and he's been going on a tear lately, and I mean, Kyle Lowry has kind of been up and down, a little inconsistent this year, less efficient. And I don't really know why Kyle Lowry's in the All-Star game, other than the fact that he's playing on the Toronto Raptors. But I mean, if Bradley Beal had Pascal Siakam and Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, if Derrick Rose had Siakam, Ibaka, Norman Powell, Van Vliet, Gasol, then it would be a completely different story. I mean, looking at Derrick Rose, he's averaging arguably just as good, maybe slightly worse numbers than Kyle Lowry with just looking at their stats on paper. But then if you compare their minutes, like Kyle Lowry's playing way more minutes. And it's not that Derrick Rose can't, it's just that he hasn't been. And when he's been on the floor, he's been very impactful for the Detroit Pistons. Now, I don't understand the fact where people want to kind of diss him or kind of just not credit him because of the fact that he's not playing starter minutes. I mean, he's still playing like 26, 27 minutes a game. And if you think I'm being a biased D-Rose fan, I mean, you can look back in history. Literally 2 years ago in 2017, 2018, I was on the record saying Lou Williams should have been an All-Star, and I felt like he was the biggest snub that year. And then even when there was an injury replacement with Paul George instead of Lou Williams, I still felt like that was kind of unfair to him. So that just like contradicts itself. I mean, if you're gonna credit someone for statistics like Trae Young, and then you're gonna credit a guy like Kyle Lowry over a Derrick Rose or Bradley Beal or Zach LaVine simply because, you know, they're winning, like, that makes no sense to me. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I would like to see if a guy like Kyle Lowry or a guy like Chris Middleton or Domantas Sabonis or Bam Adebayo, like, no offense to those guys, but if they were playing on a team like the Pistons or the Wizards and their supporting cast is guys like Isaac Bonga and, you know, Tony Snell and Svi Mikhailuk, then they probably wouldn't be doing too hot either. And that's the thing that we have to consider. I mean, All-Star, it should be an individual award. I mean, that's what it has been for a long time. If you're playing good at your level, then you should be credited. And the other thing that really bothers me is I think there's like a recency trend bias, and it just kind of affects it. Because you can look at like certain players, such as Damian Lillard, for instance. Damian Lillard, he's been an All-Star 4 times, and he's made it the last few years. But they're going to be more inclined to put him than a guy like Devin Booker, who's never made an All-Star team, simply because he's made it, and they look at him as an All-Star. Whereas Devin Booker, they look at him as a guy who's just putting up meaningless numbers on a meaningless team. I don't really agree with that argument either. I think the player that's playing, you know, at their top form should be an All-Star. Now, I'm not here to say Damian Lillard shouldn't be an All-Star. I think he's having an insane season. I think he should be an All-Star. But I'm just throwing out the fact that Portland, who right now is like 10th in the conference, and I mean, the Phoenix Suns are neck and neck with them. I mean, the San Antonio Spurs are right above them too. And DeMar DeRozan, he's played insane the past 2 months. I think you could argue he's probably played the best in the 2020s so far. So it's just really confusing. I don't really understand that fact. And I mean, when we look back in history, like, I don't think All-Stars should kind of be decided by who's winning, you know? It's a 24-man team. Now, when you look at MVP, most valuable player, like, we're going to be looking at players who are winning the most, you know, winning the most and helping their team in the best way possible. And that's where you can kind of decipher. That's why I was on the record saying James Harden probably should have got the MVP in 2017 over Russell Westbrook. Now, I know Westbrook actually had a surprisingly efficient year that year, but James Harden was leading the Rockets to the 3 seed compared to the Thunder, who were the 6 seed. And I mean, they didn't really have too much all-star help around them. I mean, I know James Harden had Eric Gordon, and I mean, Clint Capella was kind of on the rise, but I mean, you could argue that as well, like with the Oklahoma City Thunder, because he had Victor Oladipo and Steven Adams. But I just feel like All-Stars, it's really just about individual players, to be honest. I mean, I haven't really looked at it in this way because, I mean, obviously I'm looking at this now because I'm a Derrick Rose fan, and most people would know that. So I'm going to think, like, why didn't he make it? Like, this is kind of unfair. He's playing like an all-star. I mean, if you look at his per 36 numbers, he's averaging better than his MVP season. He's more efficient than almost any guard in the league. His PER is, like, in the top 20 in the league. So I don't understand, like, why he couldn't be in the All-Star game. And I think that's the reason that's kind of, like, ruining the game in a sense, like ruining the perception of the game. Because, I mean, if you play, like, NBA 2K, for instance, like, you'll see most teams have, like, 5, 6, 80 overalls that are, like, really good. Like the Boston Celtics, for instance, like, you have Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, Daniel Tice, Marcus Smart. All those guys are in the 80 overall club. But I guarantee you, no offense to those guys, but I guarantee you if you move them back probably 5-10 years from now, like probably 2 or 3 of them will be in 80 overall club. I mean, obviously Kemba and Tatum are all-stars. And I mean, Gordon Hayward would probably be around there because, I mean, he's had injuries too this year. Jaylen Brown would be an 80 overall club, but Daniel Tice, Marcus Smart, those guys, I'm sorry, they probably wouldn't be scratching that surface. And I mean, while we're talking about the All-Star game for this year and the problems, I mean, we could talk about the new format that they're having this year. Now, obviously, they're going to have 3 individual type of games for charity, and then the last game, like before the fourth quarter starts, they're going to total up all the scores, and then the winner at the end of that will get a bigger charity, and they have to score 24 points, obviously, in recognition to Kobe Bryant. Now, I'm actually fine with that complete idea. I don't think there's any problem with that. My only thing is I wish that they would just put the total score, like they wouldn't reset the score from 0-0 at the beginning of the first, second, and third quarter, because obviously we can total up individual quarters, right? So I think they should just announce like who gets their charity for each quarter. I think that would probably make the most sense. And I mean, I feel like if it's close enough though for an all-star player, like I think you gotta give the edge to the people who want to be seen in the all-star game. I mean, obviously the all-star game's in Chicago this year, so more people are gonna wanna see Derrick Rose, they're gonna wanna see Zach LaVine. So putting a guy in there like Kyle Lowry, and I mean, it's not like he's having a horrible year, but he's definitely not having a year up to his standards, I'd say. And he's been in and out of the lineup as well, so it doesn't really make too much sense to me. I think if you look at players like Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, like those guys are averaging insane statistics and they're just not even getting acknowledged. Like, it makes no sense because I feel like players that are deemed underrated or undervalued for like the first 4 or 5 years, they're just going to stay that way. And I mean, as of late, like, I mean, Derrick Rose is kind of in that conversation too, because I mean, he hasn't made an all-star team since 2012. But I feel like the recency bias like really affects it. Like, you could do the same thing in the East. I mean, Kyle Lowry, I mean, I'm going to keep mentioning Kyle Lowry, but I mean, he's made the last 4 all-star teams. And I guarantee you, no offense to Raptors fans, but I personally think this is true. No offense to Kyle Lowry, but I think if a Derrick Rose or a Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic or anyone that could possibly be in the All-Star running or whatever had made 4 straight All-Star games compared to the guy who hadn't made one in like 8 years or ever, they're more likely to give it to the guy who's made 4 straight just because they recognize them as an All-Star. And that's the thing that really bothers me, because I feel like an All-Star, you shouldn't be looking at the past. Like, it's whoever is an All-Star now. like even for the Pacers, like no offense to Domantas Sabonis, but I don't think he's necessarily an all-star. I think Malcolm Brogdon's the most important player on that team this season, and he's been in and out of the lineup. So I think that's just a rare instance where they just probably shouldn't get an all-star. I don't think you should reward a team just for being in the standings. I mean, that's the same thing that happened with Goran Dragic a few years ago, and there was an injury replacement, so they just picked him. But guys, that's basically going to do it for this video. I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest about the All-Stars, like how they're decided and all that stuff. It really doesn't make too much sense to me. I think they need to go through the change over the years. I mean, after all, NBA players, they are entertainers. So if the All-Star game is here to entertain, then I want to see players that will do that for me. You know what I mean? Like, obviously the slam dunk contest, the three-point contest, we want to see the players that would be the most exciting for that event. Same thing with the skills challenge. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe down below. And I'm out. Peace.